problem is like we have no problem educating people upon things like that are out of the norm, right? Not a lot like it's like we're like not a lot of people believe in flat Earth because it's just been the lie has been spread like a virus, right?
Not believe.
So we have no problem educating you or like even like telling you like is that like laying out or debating and stuff like that. The problem arises when you decide to just like hold on to your belief firmly and like start like just rejecting every single thing that we give you, right? And you just like it's just like that's the problem there, right? And that's where we get frustrated at.
Guy's got something to say to you, Matthew.
Hey,
The problem is that he thinks indoctrination and education are the same thing.
Facts.
No. The problem is he thinks indoctrination and critical thinking are the same thing.
And I thought the problem was that he was thick as a brick.
All kinds of problems.
We don't need to belabor this epistemological point any further. Let's continue.
Well, what's so funny is Matthew's putting himself on this like scholarly pedestal, but you just said not long ago. I think that's when someone was asking you about what causes the bending and warping of space-time, and you said it was mass or matter. I can't remember. But
He said matter.
I said matter, yeah.
Matter, but you literally said, I think that's how the story goes.
Right, because I don't understand that story very well. I'm not like an expert.
This is why I say that what you're talking about is indoctrination, not education.
Yeah, that's the way you say it implies.
Did you hear yourself?
Yeah.
I just reject your evidence and substitute my own reality.
So, Matthew, would you say what you're doing here is critical thinking? Are you saying that you're any good at that, Matthew? Critical thinking?
Yeah, I'm really good at
the word story. Why did you use the word story, Matthew?
Kai is right.
It's a story because it's kind of a coherent list of assumptions and stories and explanations that go together, and I trust the people who describe it because I have to trust them. Instead, I mean, I don't know. I haven't studied it myself, so then I have the choice whether to trust them or not, and I generally trust them.
You do have the choice.
Do you think in the scientific community they use the word stories a lot interchangeably?
Oh, they do
sometimes, story, like not too much.
Very scholarly. Seems almost
here's a cool scientific story.
And I have to correct you, Matthew. You do not have to trust the word of man.
No, I agree with that. I meant, I should have explained that better.
So I just want to ask, why do you just blatantly decide that scientists are the experts upon this, even though they're not? What reasoning do you have behind that?
Hey, Salty Dog, can you like speak up a little bit? I can barely hear you.
I'll come close to my mic. I'm sitting back. Can you hear me better now?
There you go.
Why do you trust scientists to tell you this kind of stuff? Like, why do you trust them?
In general, because the explanations that they have given seem to match reality. They're internally consistent. They have predictive power. They have the advantage of having lots of people who've looked at it and agreed with it. And so those types of
hold on. Hold on. Let me respond to all this.
One thing at a time.
One mass exception it doesn't mean anything. Just because a mass amount of people accept something doesn't mean that it's correct. For example, a massive amount of people can believe that 2 + 2 = 22. We can objectively look at it and say no. This means 2. Just because a mass amount of people look at it and think it's true does not mean that it's true, right? Another thing, saying that like they can predict reality doesn't really have too much bearing, right? Now, sure, in some fields, like I think like biology is one of those few fields. In some fields, sure, I guess you can like predictive power. It could match, like could give you value to your theory, right? But specifically with something like globe Earth, that's just not the case, right? Just like simply I guess you would have to bring up an example of this, right? But one example of Tom and his used a lot of people like to use is like to prove gravity, and essentially like saying, look, if I drop this somehow proves gravity, right? That's just not the case. So just like right there's that. I forgot what your first point was.
All right,
I can't
he
remember
said it
your
was
first point.
internally. Wait, I gotta explain. He said it was internally consistent and had predictive capabilities. That's patently false. I've already explained it 10 times. You keep skating past it. Your prediction actually is off by 10 to the 120th power.
A minor prediction that has to do with cosmology, and you can do science and engineering and satellites and GPS without all of that.
That's not a minor prediction.
Boy.
It's very
Matthew, 10 to the 120th power. How is that minor in your mind?
Matthew, you wear Velcro running shoes. You can't do any of that stuff.
It has to do with cosmology way out by the galaxy, so it's not affecting GPS systems.
Matthew, it's off by a quantity that you cannot pronounce.
It has to do with every part of the universe. You're just wrong again.
This is why begging the question is single-handedly his problem. Because each time you go to falsify something, he pushes it outside of falsification. And like, well, how do you know that gravity is real? Well, when you drop something, it proves that gravity is real. It's like, no, we've already had the experience of dropping things, and you're just saying, well, that's gravity, but you haven't proven.
Not to mention, Matthew, a lot of scientists in the community.
So talking over people a lot, Salty. You gotta watch out. Like, use your ears before your mouth. Okay.
So in the same sense, when we say, well, they're talking about movement or non-movement, you're like, yeah, but it could mean it either way. Non-movement in the sense of movement, and then movement in the sense of movement. And it's like, well, then how would you determine which is which? And you're like, well, it's arbitrary, and that's okay. That's what's wrong with begging the question. You can't falsify anything with your worldview.
Here's another point concerning epistemology. Matthew, I don't think you realize this, but you have three ultimate authorities in your epistemology, and they don't agree with one another. First, you have the Lord Almighty, and then you have the academic professionals, and then you have you. When the Lord says something, you interpret what the Lord says by what the academic professionals say. And then when the academic professionals say something that demonstrates their incoherency and a lack of justification, you appeal to yourself and say that they're wrong.
Yeah, I would describe it slightly differently. I would say God speaks through revelation, which is scripture. God speaks through revelation and creation. So we can understand some about the Creator by looking at creation, or God's word and God's world. And the phrase is, all truth is God's truth. So anything that's true is going to match, other truth. Like,
this is
what
true.
God says is true, and what we see in the world out there, we look out in the real world and see, and if there's some mismatch, then we've got one or the other incorrect, because it can't be true that two contradictory things are, that one's false and one's true.
Absolutely.
I didn't say that very well, but you know what I mean.
The law of non-contradiction, you actually adhere to that one?
Yes.
So
God said he made the earth before he made the luminaries. What about that?
There's that. I mean, there's a multitude of propositional revelation that the Lord has given us, which these academic professionals are contradicting, and you are trying to interpret the Lord's word through their word. And so you set them up as the ultimate authority over the Lord. And then when they say something that disagrees with you, you appeal to yourself and contradict academic professionals. You have three different ultimate authorities in your epistemology, and they don't agree with one another. This is incoherent.
Well, so here's an example. God says in his word, he's talking about the righteous man. He said, surely he shall not be moved forever. The righteous shall be an everlasting remembrance. And so if somebody said, God says the righteous won't be moved, and then I look at science and say, oh, I saw a righteous person over there, and he actually walked away, he moved, then I've got one or the other of my truth claims is wrong.
You're not really making it. You're not really making clear whether you're refuting it. Are you going to keep trying or what?
Sorry, but I think he means moved from the word of the scripture, not moved physically.
Right, and that's a good explanation, and that would be the answer.
Okay, but still, That's not actually addressing Gregory at all.
Oh, I'm making
And
a
so,
point.
Because within what Gregory said, he's telling you it's this or that. You're not saying, well, how you've characterized this situation and me in it is incorrect. All you keep saying is, well, I see it this way. No. Is the words he's using to characterize you correct or incorrect, and then justify it?
Yes. So what he said, that there's three different authorities.
So there's the law that's here aside from us. That's God. That's truth. That's everything that's true. Then there's man's interpretation. That's your authority. The people that most of the people believe in the globe. And then there's you, when there's a piece of rhetoric that's out there that you disagree with, so you interpret it through your own eyes. Those are the three. Are you doing that, or are you not doing that?
No, I'm not doing that. I'm saying that all three of them are sources of truth. And if there is a contradiction, we need to figure out where the contradiction is. And that's why I gave the example. Surely.
Well, how could you say, no, I'm not doing that, and then proceed to answer it as if you did?
Are you practicing active listening? Did you hear what I said?
Because you said, no, it's not. But if we were to consider these three separate things that I'm trying to tell you is similar, so what I said you're doing is what you're doing. And that's not actually addressing what Gregory's saying.
Can I ask Matthew?
I'm listening to you.
Kai, go ahead.
Honestly,
when you're done, I have two.
Wait.
I just honestly want to know about how many hours per week do you think you spend on the flat Earth discussion?
5 or 6.
Okay.
Okay, now I got two quick ones for you, Matthew. The first one is, do you believe the Earth, Sun, and the Moon are three balls floating in space? Is that what you believe?
Yes.
Okay. Why do you observe the Sun and the Moon above the horizon at any given time if that is fact?
Because the angle between the Sun to the Earth to the Moon can be less than 180 degrees.
Wrong. If the moon's on one side and the sun's on the other, you would never see them both above the horizon at the same time. Thank you.
That's true. That would be 180 degrees. And I just said that sometimes it can be less than 180 degrees.
Yeah. Matthew, do you see what you just did right there? You see how you just made a point? No. He just made a point, and you just responded with a red herring retort.
It sounded like he was saying that you should never be able to see the sun and the moon in the sky at the same time. And that's true if that line is 180 degrees from the sun to the moon to the sun to the earth to the moon. And my response was a description of why that's not true, because sometimes it can be less than 180. So it was a perfect answer to his question.
No, you see, he never said you would never see them. He said sometimes you would not see them.
Could you repeat your question? I thought his question was, why do you see them in the sky at the same time?
Flat man. So you question.
Yeah, exactly. I would never see the sun and the moon in the sky at the same time if one was on one side of the ball and one was on the other side of the ball. And I wouldn't see them both at the same time.
No, he's right. If they made 180 degrees, you would not see them at the same time. And that's true with a full moon. Like full moon, you go outside, the full moon is at night and the sun, so you don't see a full moon in the sky.
Matthew, I've seen the moon in various stages in the sky during the day.
Yeah, and that's when it's not full, when it's less than 180 degrees.
No, full, quarter, a sliver.
Yeah, a quarter moon, you'd see, it'd be making 90 degrees.
I said full, a quarter, a sliver, a half moon. I've observed all different moon phases in the sky during the day with the sun above the horizon.
Nobody's ever seen a full moon in the middle of the day.
Okay.
I'm talking about nobody. It's never happened.
I have.
I've seen it, but I guess it's never happened.
Not at 12, but not at 12, but it shouldn't be possible like at 10 either. And that's possible. Not at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or anything like that, but
Right.
But
Yeah,
nobody's arguing. But nobody's arguing that though. So why are you taking it to that point of absurdity to refute it when that's not like?
I thought Flatman Can was implying that you could never see any phase of the moon in the sky.
No. Matthew, do you agree you shouldn't be able to see the new moon at night?
A brand new moon you can't see for like a day or two. It depends on how new you mean.
Yeah, like a crescent moon.
Crescent moon is gonna, you'll never see a crescent moon at like midnight, for example.
Yeah, so if I see a crescent moon at midnight, it debunks your model, right?
It does.
Okay. So
What is that true? Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, if you go out at midnight and see a crescent moon, then that's completely against the.
I actually think I've seen that time.
Unless you're way, I suppose if you're way far north in the northern latitudes or southern latitudes, and the sun, it's like gone.
No.
Nah, man. I'm really. Go ahead, Glenn.
Trying to orient yourself in the idea.
You know what debunks his model? Water.
Oh my God.
Play. Get back to the topic, maybe. Jesus.
Yeah, so a brand new.
You guys don't want to keep doing it. I understand. We have covered a lot of quotes, so I don't care.
A new moon new moon is not that many degrees separated from the sun. A brand new moon is not that separate. A crescent moon is not that many degrees separated from the sun. So that's why you wouldn't see it at midnight. Unless it's like the night of the midnight sun or whatever.
How many degrees separated is it?
It depends on how new it is. Maybe 20 degrees, within 20 degrees.
I'm trying to imagine this in my mind because someone has the mind to imagine this, and they're orienting this humongous sun and the earth and the moon and their different positions around the earth. And look,
Okay.
I'd like to hear you keep going with it with some more thoughts.
Me too.
Okay, perfect. Here's another quote.
Please clip the whole conversation, and I mean, please do that.
Cut the last 30 minutes out. But yeah, I hear you. So no longer could astronomer. My bad. Let me sit up. No longer could astronomers hope that the Copernican dilemma would disappear with improved data. The data were in hand, and their implication inescapable. We are at the center of a spherically symmetric distribution of gamma ray burst sources, and this distribution has an outer edge. Astrophysicist Jonathan Katz, in regard to the CMB data. No take, Matthew?
Yeah, so it appears we're at the center of the universe from the CMB data.
That's right. And there's still no answer. Why is the solar system cosmically aligned? Astrophysicist Dragan Huderer. Maybe there's a German person that could say it right. But anyway, this is also in response to the CMB. These are modern era prominent astrophysicists. So how is it again that heliocentrism is more viable? What am I missing?
So yes, why is the solar system aligned? Because it was designed that way is my answer.
Yeah, but that would mean the Earth's in the center.
I think I'd be okay with the solar system being in the center of the universe. I don't know if I would go so far as to say the Earth is the center. I mean, as you mentioned 100 times with the other quotes, you can arbitrarily choose what to use as the center.
Okay. So the apparent alignment of the cosmic microwave background in one particular direction through space is called evil because it undermines our ideas about the standard cosmological model. The Copernican principle seems to be in jeopardy. Astrophysicist Ashok Singhal.
Yeah, I haven't heard that quote there. I don't know why he would call it evil. That doesn't make sense.
Because they call it the axis of evil. They call there's an equator alignment with the equinox and the equator based on the CMB with the Earth, central to the Earth. So they call it the axis of evil. You tell me why they say that. Because it's philosophy. It's religion. That's why they call it evil. That has nothing to do with science.
Yeah, probably so.
It's starting to become pretty undeniable. So here's another one. Looking into this anomaly more deeply, we will find that it remains robust throughout all 7 years of published WMAP data. And furthermore, that it is very difficult to explain within the context of the canonical inflationary lambda cold dark matter of cosmology, also known as the Big Bang. The observations disagree markedly with the predictions of the theory. Astrophysicists Glenn D. Starkman, Craig Copey, Dragan Huderer, and Dominic Schwarz.
Yeah, so they have some work to do with cosmology.
Oh yeah, this has been like a decade and they still can't figure it out. All right. One of the most surprising findings is that the fluctuations of the cosmic microwave background temperatures at large angular scales do not match those predicted by the standard Big Bang model. The European Space Agency, Planck Probe 2013.
Sounds right.
Okay. It is both amusing and instructive to speculate on what might have happened if such an experiment could have been performed in the 16th or 17th centuries when men were debating the rival merits of the Copernican and Ptolemaic systems. The results would have surely have been interpreted as conclusive evidence for the immobility of the Earth, and therefore as a triumphant vindication of the Ptolemaic system and irrefutable falsification of the Copernican hypothesis. Physicist G.J. Whitrow. This is referring to Michelson-Morley.
Yeah, I think he's right. They would have seen that as evidence that the Earth isn't really.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. Okay, I have two things to say that might surprise you. First, geocentrism is a valid frame of reference. And second, heliocentrism is not any more or less correct. Astronomer Phil Plait.
That sounds good too. However, I thought that you were trying to say that it is less correct.
Well, it is, yeah, because of the, again, the dark matter and dark energy problem.
So Phil Plait is wrong when he says it's not any more or less correct. You can't.
He's specifically talking about the frame of reference, a valid frame of reference. He's not talking about dark matter and dark energy. They just ignore that part.
So it's valid to use as a frame of reference either geocentrism or heliocentrism.
Yes, mathematically, but we have a problem with everything else. That's the point.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to be able to choose which one I want to use.
Yeah, in particular, ignore that you're off by 10 to the 120th power.
The 10 to the 20th power isn't going to be fixed by geocentrism versus heliocentrism.
That's wrong, dude. You don't understand. See,
no,
if
you
the Earth is geocentric, then the bodies, the sizes changes, the relative distance changes. If you then interpret the redshift differently as opposed to velocity shift, and it's the Doppler effect, then it would create the paradigm that everything is much more local and a much more dense medium, and it's closed, and the Earth is very young.
So that's geocentrism plus a bunch of other stuff. So if you add all that other stuff, there is a huge difference. But just the raw difference of where you choose the frame of reference that Phil Plait is talking about isn't going to make that much difference.
No, you're wrong. You still don't understand. So if everything's expanding equally out from the Earth, then we don't have a problem with the dark matter, dark energy. If we're a tiny speck of dust in this ever-expanding universe with no directional preference, then that means that the galaxies and the expansion have to be something other than that, and it's not a closed system. So in the geocentric closed system, we have no problem with the dispersion of space. Within the heliocentric paradigm, you have to have a certain speed, and you don't have it. So they are fundamentally different.
So based on your definition of geocentrism, then okay, they're different if you add all that stuff, yes.
No, it's not all that stuff. Geocentrism is that the Earth is the center and everything is evenly distributed relative to that central point. Heliocentrism is that everything is chaotically expanding in all directions and there's no preference central to the Earth. In that latter scenario, you have to explain dark matter and dark energy. More so, you have to invoke it to explain why the speeds are so wrong. They're fundamentally different.
I disagree, but we can go ahead.
Well, this is just subjective. Okay, so this assumption is made because it is believed to be unreasonable that we should be near the center of the universe. Physicist George F.R. Ellis. Again, this is just philosophy because people claim there's no way. It's unreasonable to think that the Earth is special.
I agree with
you. Terrible excuse for science.
I agree with you in this case that he is making a philosophical statement And this is an example of scientism, where scientists think that they have the corner on philosophy just because they can make pronouncements like this. But they're wrong. They're making statements of philosophy, not science in that case.
That's correct. Metaphysics, ontological premise. Okay. In the effort to explain the Michelson-Morley experiment, the thought was advanced that the Earth might be stationary. Such an idea was not considered seriously, since it would mean in effect that our Earth occupied the omnipotent position in the universe, with all the other heavenly bodies paying homage by revolving around it. Arthur S. Otis, Light, Velocity, and Relativity, page 58. That's again, they just throw it out because it would mean that the Earth is important. So the evidence shows that the Earth is at rest and that the Earth is geocentric, but they just throw it out. And the only reason to justify throwing it out is because they prefer philosophically that it's not important. That does not mean that there's an adequate explanation for both sides. What that means is that they were intellectually dishonest. They were dishonest intellectually.
Well, I would say that they throw it out specifically because their forefathers built off of the premise that the Earth was moving around the sun. And so what they're saying is they can't go against that.
That's right. I've actually seen an interview with Lawrence Krauss where he basically says that. And also Michio Kaku. Michio Kaku said if God floated down and told him that the Earth was actually stationary and geocentric, he would say, damn, I have to quit my job. Everything I've ever done was useless. So he just straight up explains it. Also, Lawrence Krauss says the same thing. That if they were to find it, his entire career would be in vain. So they do not entertain it because of pride.
They're stuck in the sunken cost fallacy.
Which is a terrible place to be because dogma slaughters knowledge.
While also being stuck in sin, suppressing the knowledge of the truth and unrighteousness, preferring the lie.
Yep, to justify your immorality, immoral materialism. Effectively. Okay, I've already known. Sorry.
Just real quick for Matthew, you see how Whitsitt is quoting one quote after another, and it is blatantly, unmistakably contradicting the Lord Almighty.
So I would say that they are doing philosophy, not science, when they're saying those things.
It's not philosophy either. This is why I kept mentioning that point earlier. This isn't philosophy because philosophia, the seeking of wisdom, if you are seeking knowledge, then you have a valid epistemology, especially which includes an ultimate authority that makes knowledge possible. But they're contradicting the ultimate authority, which is the Lord Almighty. They set themselves up as the Lord Almighty and contradict the word of the Lord Almighty. And then when you disagree with them, you set yourself up as Lord over them, becoming the God of God.
Exactly. Seeking truth requires the removal of bias, and they are blatantly doing the opposite.
Yeah, so like the George F. Ellis quote that saying it's unreasonable to think that we're at the center of the universe. That's straight up a philosophical claim, and I think that's false.
Unjustified, right?
But then I thought Matthew said that he trusts science.
I do. Yeah, I trust science generally. Not when they're making stupid philosophical statements, though. Like
But here's the thing. Not just George Ellis. Again, Edwin Hubble, the one that was paramount to building the newest or the latest understanding of what people call the cosmos. So people's understanding about expansion, movement, the background medium, and redshift, blue shift, all of this, right? Everything that everyone could potentially think of about space as it is known today or thought about today comes from a guy, starts with a guy who says, well, we don't really know whether or not the ancients were wrong about this thing. So then what was the justification 500 years ago? I keep telling you, and you keep saying science, but give me specifics.
Fun fact, this notion that Ellis is a prominent figure in promulgating cosmic pluralism.
You know, if all this stayed in the philosophical or hypothetical realm, that'd be one thing. But when they take it to the material world and claim that there's something physical on Mars they're controlling from here and stealing tons of loot, it puts it on a whole nother level.
Yeah. Continue with it.
It's a different level. Go ahead with it.
He's making coffee right now. But I was gonna say,